Hello, everyone. Back again in the Design Lounge, season five, and I am selfishly excited for this episode. This series this month is going to be all about art and style. Of course, my background in fashion. I love talking about that. I love talking about designers that have a background in fashion as well. So, before we get too far into it, I'll let Alicia Cheung-Lichtenstein of Studio Heimat introduce herself and what exactly it is that you guys do.
Right, well, thank you, Brandon. So I'm Alicia, and I am one of the owners of Studio Heimat. Heimat is a German word that means place that feels like home. And we are based in San Francisco. Um, and we do mostly residential design with some hospitality, bars, restaurants, and we're hoping that we will be working on our first boutique hotel this year.
Fingers crossed. I'm sure that's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see.
And so I haven't mentioned, so we met in Las Vegas. I was actually moderating a panel that was talking about the overlap, if you will, of fashion design and all aspects of fashion, art, and style. And I remember when we spoke, the first thing I saw backstage, I was like, oh, look at her shoes. Well, I can't, I want to say there were some Louis Vuitton shoes. Do you remember what shoes you had on that day?
They were
Okay.
like gold slingback Louis Vuitton shoes, like a square front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny because, like, for me, everything I remember, like, my memories as I go back as a child, I don't want to date myself. But, anyways, so I won't say the actual things that sparked those memories, but
Yeah.
it always the outfit I wore. So I always have like a picture, like a picturesque memory of like, okay, I wore that outfit at that event or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But what I didn't know until like going through this conversation is you actually started with in the fashion industry. What were you doing and what were you thinking you were going to become when you were doing fashion?
So I went to school for textiles and clothing, and I double majored in economics because my dad was like, "You can't just do textiles and clothing. That's irresponsible."
Yeah.
So I did also
Little did
economics.
he know. Little did he know.
I know, right? Look where we are now. So I went into the retail side, like the business side of retail, working for a regional like store,
Mhm.
mostly Nevada, Arizona, California. And it was an interesting experience. I started as a business analyst there,
Gotcha.
and it was like spreadsheets all day, every day. And I realized like I had talked myself into like, oh, you like numbers, you can do that, but not every day. So soon enough, my hair was falling out, and I was like, I need to leave this place and find something else to do. And so I did some soul searching. That's how I got into interior design. But I had always had a interest in styling, like the self-expression of putting outfits together, what you're
Totally.
trying to communicate to others. So that had always interested me. And, in hindsight, if I had maybe been a little more connected to the end client as I am now, but in
Yeah.
fashion, as a stylist or as a professional shopper or something like that, I might have stayed there in that field. But
Here you.
here we
It seemed like you worked. I don't know if you know this, but I used to be a merchant analyst, so I was a numbers person as well. And
Uh-huh.
so, what's interesting about that, I'm not going to talk too much about myself, but what's interesting about that is that helped a lot because I understood that I'm very much right and left brain, so the analytical number side. I was like good at numbers as a kid growing up, and then I was like, okay, but I have this creative expression. And so when I started myself in styling, it was always professionals and like professionals in high level sales. And I was talking about numbers through style, right? I wasn't your typical like, oh, wear this. I'm like, no, this is the ROI attached to it because I had a background in that finance numbers aspect. I know you and your co-principal Eva. Is it Eva or Eva?
Ava.
Ava. Okay, so I said it wrong both ways. But
So it's spelled EVA, but
yeah,
like,
exactly.
so
So
Eva, yeah.
thank you for saving me for that. But so I know both of you guys met working for Ken Fulk, right? And I know he is well known for fashion. I know he often wears Tom Brown. But what I want to know within that, what did you learn working with someone that is embodies his, I think, artistic style through what he wears? How did you take that into what you do now with your guys' firm?
So I remember one all hands we had. I don't think we called them that, but to borrow from the startup world, all
Okay.
hands meeting, where he told us, because he had started in staging in like 1997. I joined in 2009. Um, So at some point, he just like decided, you know what, I'm gonna dress for the job that I want. And so he would
God.
wake up every day and put on basically a three-piece suit
Hmm.
and look just amazing, like very important, right? Like no matter where he goes, whether it's coffee shop or just like parking his car or whatever, or a
Yeah.
client meeting, it just was like, I am here and I have a presence and you will respect and notice,
Notice me.
and notice me, yeah. So I mean, for me, I thought it was a very poignant uh gesture that he was like, telling us this because in some way he was basically telling all of us, you all need to level up your
Yeah.
appearance at that point in time.
Yeah.
I don't know what year it was, but for me, I look at my calendar for the day and I make sure that I'm dressing for like towards that client or that event or whatnot. Like, and I have a client who, like, we have a client who is very casual. I never
Okay.
wear any jewelry when I go to see her. Very kind of plain. I barely put on makeup versus other clients who are, just much more, I guess, sort of showy or like just are more, have more display of their wealth and their status.
Maximalist.
Maximalist, but also just like they like are kind of society, so
Okay.
a
Yeah.
socialite. In that, it's totally fine. Wear whatever you want. Do the designer clothing. They'll know what it is. So it's like signals. It's like all these signals through
Right.
what. So
No, it's definitely, and I always say like we all are walking billboards, right? Regardless of the industry you're in, but specifically in interior design and fashion, right? Art that really is you are a walking billboard at all times. And it's a good point you made is whether you're going to get coffee, whether you're going to a business meeting, like you non-verbally communicate before you even have that conversation. And so I always say like you can set yourself up for success or set yourself up for the likelihood of success, I guess if you will. It's not saying that this is going to make it work, but it will provide you with the opportunity and the expectation on the receiver's end to be like, oh, okay, this is how I'm dealing with. This is what I'm expecting. And this is what, and as long as then the conversation is relatable and in alignment with that, it makes your job easier, whether that's a client you're supposed to work with, I would imagine, or not. I noticed you and Ava have complementary but different styles, wardrobe wise, right? And I was going through some of the projects, and I believe it was, I can't think of the name, the downtown high rise, where
yep.
it's like you see vignettes of color, and then you see rooms that are very serene and clean. How much of a benefit do you think that is having co-principals or just having a collaborative team? I know you have like, is it 12 now people that work with you,
The
or you,
Well, we're fewer than that now. We're about six.
okay. Okay, but being able to collaborate with people that have high level taste, but different types of taste.
You know, I mean, we say this to our clients all the time. It is like a marriage. It is a conversation and a process. Our approach is about, the client is our muse.
Hmm.
And I find that when you have more creative minds kind of speaking to each other, it makes for a richer conversation and output at the end of the day. Because people are coming at things from different perspectives. And we all know like more perspectives or a more diverse dis perspective pool
Yeah.
I gets you a more interesting result, and definitely more thoughtful because people are looking at things from a different point of view. Um, and from a practical standpoint or like creative process standpoint, I think a lot of our peers often say to us, "Oh, you guys are so lucky because you're two. Like, you have
Mm,
someone to share in the ups and the downs and the, oh, I just want to throw this crazy idea out, but I don't necessarily want to say it to the client or like
yeah.
tell my team to do that thing. I more just want to like have a conversation." So I do think it's super beneficial that there are two of us and we are able to kind of have that interplay.
Do you guys, you mentioned like sometimes depending on the client, you might dress a certain way or present yourself differently based upon what their taste is. Do you find your guys self taking on different projects or areas within the project depending on the clientele's taste level?
You mean between me and Ava?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, I mean, not really. I think
Okay.
we have a similar range of design that we can pull from and like move in and out of. I'd say maybe the thing that might be more natural to her that is less natural to me is perhaps play with like a lot of different plaids or I know
Okay.
that's specific, but it's because it's like we're talking, comes from a Swiss heritage, so
Yeah, I
there's
noticed that.
like gingham and that sort of interplay. Mountain, like we've done a mountain home in Switzerland, which she had a huge hand in, and I think that's probably it. I mean, we kind of similarly don't do fully traditional and also don't do really like modern, austere modern.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think we work well together in that range that we're and comfortable in the range.
But you okay? So you guys have been together since 2015, right? That's when you launched the firm. How much have your tastes rubbed off on each other, or has it a lot?
I
In the 9 years, going on 10 years, which is I'll say it. We're a little bit ahead, but congratulations on that milestone that's coming up next year. But
Right.
how much has that? How much has that? Have you seen that change over or shift?
I guess I don't know anything else, so I'm
Okay.
not entirely sure how much maybe I am more open-minded to things that maybe I wasn't drawn to as much before. Like I'm wearing brown right now. Okay,
Yeah.
that's for something because like our whole logo is brown and everything, and our website is, and it's not something I would have been drawn to before, but I think she definitely has a more earthy tone tendency, and
Yeah.
I like to have like maybe more saturated, brighter colors, but it all depends on the context of the project. So yes, in that point, like when we do work with clients, you're like, I want a pink rug. Okay, I'm probably gonna be the one pulling the palms for
You're
that.
like, you're like,
Me.
well, I mean, well, and you said yourself, you're like the rich auntie, right? Like you're the your style is the rich auntie with a little bit of mix, and then I know you have the Lon Von, I'll say it correctly, the Lon Von dress, the pink.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have wore that today. Is that where you get though? Where you guys? You said you mentioned there's an aspect of edginess that you implement into your designs, right? Yet you have these aspects. Is that really where you like to shine in your wheelhouse? And you're like, okay, yeah, do you want the pink? That's definitely like I can do the other things as well, but that's why I really love to get that out sometimes.
Right. I think the edginess comes from like the mixture of something maybe unexpected and a little hard.
Okay.
Like literally things with edge, right? Like it
Yeah.
could be like a trim that has almost like a Salvador Ferragamo kind of or Valentine like spikes kind of look to it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it's subdued. It looks like a traditional more like nail head, but you can also make that fashion reference. I think definitely the interplay of like maybe an unexpected color and or I also like metallics. So like if there is like space to have if clients love are open to metallic, like we will get it in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
uh, it just depends. But yes, I do think the edginess also can come out in art and having something a little bit more provocative or something that is speaking to just like the cultural times now or whatnot. I think you can do so much with like having a neutral palette and if the client
Totally.
wants but have something really like strong as a piece of art potentially.
That juxtaposition.
Hmm.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
that tells an entirely different story. Is it as a designer that's been doing for so long and a successful designer with many projects, I'm sure there ranges vast amount of taste. Is it easier to work with a client that essentially gives you carte blanche access and says, "Hey, come up with a story for me," or is it actually easier when they have guardrails, if you will, that you have to, you're still trying to get again adding that juxtaposition in there, but you're still getting that their taste out, which I'm sure there's variance in both in benefits and benefits to both. But which is easier, I guess, to work within?
We tend to work with the latter, where
Okay.
we are really getting to know the client and
Hmm.
doing, them justice. They are the muse and kind of running it through our studio
I
home, of
love
course.
that, by the way, that the client is amused.
They are. And that
Yeah,
is definitely something from fashion as well. You kind of
totally.
have to look at what you do have a subject matter, and then you kind of go, okay, what are all the possibilities I see within this? Um, But we did do a showcase house, a physical
Okay.
showcase house in 2019, and we made up our muse for that. But it was so fun. So I'm like, I want to say the first one is maybe easier in some way
Uh-huh.
because I think now that perhaps it's also an evolution. As you say, we're coming up on our 10 year, we're in our like 10th year of business right now, and it would be nice to have more projects in which we can really exercise the creative from start to finish with, a couple guardrails, but like really having a client that appreciates and understands the aesthetic and is like, go for it. Like, I'm gonna be happy as long as I have these things that I
These few
need.
things, these
Yeah,
requirements, but within that, do
right.
what you may.
Yeah, because the showcase house we did was such a labor of love, and I think we really kind of made this pretend muse come to life in some
Yeah,
way, and it was just so much fun thinking through all the layers, and it was completely outlandish. Like, I don't
yeah,
think a real person would necessarily like live in that room, but
yeah,
it was just so fun. Pink walls and like canopies with like heliconia canopies with, antique bed frame like that felt kind of colonial, and crazy like bug wallpaper, and rug company rugs and acrylic swings that were like diachroic, so that it was a kid's room or like a
yeah.
teenager's. But it was just so fun.
Who was the muse? Did you
Our
have a
music,
specific person jumping off point, or was it just someone
yeah.
totally?
We just made it up.
Okay,
We just started pulling things, and we're like, okay, what fits with this? Okay, let's talk about our story before we jump all the way in. It was a pair of twin girls that were moving from Singapore to San
yeah,
Francisco, which is where their mother was from. And
got
in
you.
this,
Okay,
they were, I think, 12 or 13, like really just on that cusp of a very formative time of their, youth. And we wanted to create a space for them to like be very feeling, but also explore who they are, and um, kind of dive into their interests. We were like, one loves is a um, botanist, and the other is an entomologist, like likes bugs. We're in a tropical place. Like, how can we bring that out? How can we
yeah,
bring out, like tropical plants and motifs and whatnot? So, as you can imagine, very saturated in color, very much a experience when you stood in the room. But then we punctuated it with art from Carissa Potter, who was before the pandemic. So this is before the pandemic, and she's like a
okay.
very healing artist, and she would have things that, like line drawings. I would say, if someone is toxic in your life, it's okay to let them go, and it'd be like a balloon with a little face on it, and like things like that. Where I'm like, those are all there was 6 messages, and we wanted, it's like we were speaking to our younger selves,
Okay.
essentially. We had
Yeah.
a number of people like cry in the room because they're like, I wish I had known about that when I was a teenager, you know?
Speaking about childhood, speaking to your younger self, there's a story that said you used to paint your room and your furniture, your walls like sponge.
Oh
So
yeah.
so so obviously it seems like you were born to do this. It seems like your parents also allowed you to have that freedom. Is that it seems like the case?
You I was thinking about that recently. We had moved, and I was like 8, I think, going
Okay, I
into
was gonna
fourth.
ask you how old you were during this time.
Yeah, I was 8. I was going into fourth grade. We moved this summer between third and fourth grade. I refused to move. So I never got out of the car through all the open houses. It wasn't until they put an offer in that I finally accepted the fact that I was moving, because it was
Okay.
like across town. So it was like no, different friends, different place entirely, probably not going to see people again, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I picked my room. And then from that moment, I think it like anchored that's place for me. Like I had a home in this new, in this new neighborhood, a new school, and everything that was just for me. And I think now, like, my mom must have been like, okay, let's get Alicia excited about her room. Like, I was just thinking about this
Mm-hmm.
last week. So she had hired a decorative painter to come sponge paint my room to match my, like, bedding in a bag, like cover, like duvet, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. I remember.
Not cool anymore, but that's what we had then, right? We didn't have parachute
Right?
hose
No.
in the 90s. So she painted it to match
So
it,
it'd be
and I
like the 10 pieces or whatever, right? Like you get so
yeah,
many pieces in a bag, and it was like,
and
yeah, no,
top sheet, the
exactly, exactly.
yeah, pillowcases. So she took inspiration from my bedding, and she
Yeah,
took a piece of, it was like a plastic bag, like for fruit,
yeah.
the grocery store. We tore off one of those, and she sponge painted my room, and I watched her, and I was so fascinated. So after that, I would go to Michael's, and I would buy like all the puffy paint colors of the same colors essentially, and I would sponge paint my whole, like all my furniture
Yeah.
to match. So I had an ensuite room before I knew what that was.
But the thing is, it sounds like your parents, your mother was able to, you were able to create that narrative, right? Create that story. And now
Yeah.
looking at it now, full circle, I think your tagline says like design that tells a story.
Yeah.
And so that's always seemed like it's been a through line with what you do. One of the things I love is that you guys name your projects.
Mm.
Who is responsible for me, like I said, style, but also from a branding marketing perspective? Who is responsible for naming the projects? And
Yep.
then what at what timeline in the creative process do you come up with the name? Is that something that's at the beginning or is it at the end? Like when does that come to fruition?
We tend to name the projects after the projects are done.
Okay.
Because I mean, some of them have nicknames with the clients, but we usually just have a side mark as we're working on it.
Okay.
But the names usually come at the end, and it's usually myself, or if we have a marketing person that's helping us with things, then at the
Mhm.
time, then they're also like giving some input.
Yeah.
We've gotten a little bit more creative over in the last year, which has been, I think, more refreshing. And we're working on a booklet right now that has all of the names. I'm not sure if they're as updated on the website or not, but in the booklet they are, and so we'll at some point update everything so it all matches.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really taking inspiration from who the client is while still maintaining their privacy and keeping it interesting because I mean, you do a lot of research and you see how other folks are naming things, and you're like, okay, Hillsborough House 1, Hillsborough House 2. You're like, okay,
No.
that's
Well, and the thing is, and the reason I love it because it tells a story, right? And that's why I was curious about when you guys actually do it because I would imagine it's very indicative of the design. But also, you notice that whether it elevates, I think, the branding and marketing within the project, right? When I think of like high end real estate or things of that nature, you never see a new complex or a luxury subdivision, if you will, that doesn't have a name attached to it, right? And they all have mottos. And it's like you normally see it, and I feel like there's also just an aspect of because it is elevated and it enhances the pricing, it enhances the taste, it enhances the expectation. So it just adds that layer of storytelling that a
right.
lot of people that are probably going to watch this, designers and people within the industry, and be like, okay, that's a marketing. Not that I want them to take your marketing tactic, but that's a marketing tactic that should be implemented if you are have a higher taste level or or want to charge a premium price. I would assume.
And I guess part of the reason why we don't name the projects at the beginning too is
Hmm.
because we are writing the story as we're going. So it's
Totally.
hard and I don't want to impose on the process by naming it a thing already if we don't totally if it's a first project with that client.
Yeah.
If we know them, I think that's a little bit different because we already understand who they are and like what that essence of that project will be. But if it isn't, then I think telling the story in hindsight and picking out the parts that are more interesting and to highlight and what came through in the end helps us sort of solidify like the entire arc of that project.
It's like the final chapter, right? The final chapter in that book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Much more of a marketing question, but along the lines of what we're talking about. How do you determine which projects get shot? And that's part A. Part B is I noticed that a couple different projects have different photographers. Do you select the photographer based on the type of project, or is it just simply that's the photographer that's available for that time? Because usually a lot of the same photographers over and over again. But do you select photographers based on the type of project, or how does that work?
Um, how do we just okay, so to tackle the first part, how do we
For
decide
how do you decide which products are
yeah.
do you want to shoot
Yeah.
shoot? You know,
Um, I think if they are products that are perhaps large enough and or really I guess the question at the end is would we want to do another project that looks like this or
got you.
might be
Okay.
might be inspired by this?
Hmm.
If the answer is yes, then we should definitely photograph that project. Whether we get it published or not, that's
Yeah.
usually the first thing, right? You want to get it published. And then after that,
Oh,
it's
we
like,
know
okay,
about that. Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah, we know about how exactly that process.
you know, but like maybe not
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah,
And then, and then seconds just for your socials and to have some content, right?
yeah.
And then secondly, about the photographers. So we've learned, it's been a learning curve. I think finding a photographer that you like their aesthetic and you like working with them. It's just like a good vibe during
Hmm.
photo shoots. Every photographer we've worked with has, in some moment of the photo shoot, it has been like literal magic. And you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
you made that look
Right?
amazing.
Yeah.
And then you're hooked. So then you go, okay, I want to recreate that magic again with that person. So you kind of try to be consistent. Um, we I, but then let's see, maybe 3 years ago we had a conversation when someone's like, if you are ever thinking about wanting to do a book, you should consider having the same photographer shoot all of the projects.
Makes
So
sense.
so that there's consistency through. But I have
Totally.
seen examples of both. I've read through
Yeah.
books that there are five photographers or there's just one photographer. So, I think you can make it happen however, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. Like if people watching this are like, oh, I want to try out five photographers. I'm like, probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably just stick with one.
Yeah.
And then you have consistency in your portfolio, on your website, on your Insta, etc. So
So now, so it seems like we have breaking news, but so you guys have a book in the works then, or do you have an idea? Are we getting an exclusive for In the Design Lab? Like, when is this happening? Are we speaking into fruition? I know you haven't talked about speaking into fruition. Is that
I
coming soon?
no, it's not gonna be soon, but
Okay.
I it's definitely a goal of ours. So
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. You guys mentioned in the project, the process, that at the final moments, you leave the finishing touches, if you will.
Mhm.
Explain what those finishing touches are. 'Cause I think that's important regardless of all art and style, right? Whether it's fashion, whether it's interior design, whether it's commercial design, in all aspects, there's that last, you know, you know, just icing on top, right? What is it that you guys do and why is it so important in what you guys offer?
Well, I would say in this process, like people have to remember that they're hiring a creative person, and our job is to make it as streamlined as possible and make it make sense to them. We work with a lot of like finance people and tech people, and so like the idea of like a process is good, that
Hmm.
there's a linearity, so to speak. But you must leave room to make the magic, right? Like you must
Yeah.
leave room for serendipity to happen or for something to happen. And so in the finishing touches, I think that is where, okay, maybe this entire time we thought the layout of this furniture was going to be this way. But
Yeah.
we're in space now, and the mover just put it over there, and we're like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like maybe we should leave it there, and we could always move it. We know it
Yeah.
all fit. Something like that. Or definitely the accessories and the art and just the styling is such an important piece that actually does take so much time to curate all the items ahead of time, to
Yeah.
bring them in. And it always kind of feels like kind of flippant, like, oh, well, I don't know if we need accessories, or oh, it's just, it's like, well, actually you really do, because without that, this is not gonna, you're gonna move in and feel like this is not a finished home. Like
Something's
you need
missing.
something is definitely missing. You need those finishing touches. So, definitely art, definitely accessories, soft things, a couple of personal effects. I mean, we always love to do like a gallery wall, like a bedroom hallway, or somewhere semi-private in the residence, not necessarily right when you walk in. But I think those are all things that make places and spaces feel unique and homey and comfortable for people. And like you just want to stay.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's it. I think that's leaving space, leaving room for the magic. That is a great place to end. Thank you so much. I can't wait to the next time we connect, whether it's on a stage, whether it's shopping, whether I'm in San Francisco or vice versa. I definitely have to connect soon. And thanks again. I look forward to future projects.
Thank you, Brandon. This is awesome. So fun.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.